What if I told you that the author of Harry Potter was rejected by 12 publishers, lived on government support, and battled thoughts of suicide before her story ever reached a single reader? This is the story of how the world's biggest failure became one of its greatest successes, so make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications because you won't want to miss how she did it. I am sure that almost everyone here has seen the Harry Potter movies, or maybe you have read the wonderful books. But do you know the real story behind the story? What if I told you that one of the most successful women in the entire world once felt so lost that she wanted to end her own life? That she was a single mother, living in extreme poverty, fighting with deep sadness, and rejected by 12 different book publishers? What if I told you that this woman, who had no job and felt she had no hope, later became a billionaire? This is the incredible story of J.K. Rowling, the amazing woman who created Harry Potter, one of the most famous and beloved book series in all of history. This is more than just a story. It is a lesson in life, a lesson in persistence, and a lesson in never, ever giving up on your dream. If you have ever failed at something, if you have ever felt lost, or if you have ever thought about giving up, then I promise you, this story is for you. And if you are learning English, this is the perfect story to listen to, because every word is simple and chosen carefully so it is easy to understand. So please, stay with me until the very end, because this story might just change the way you see failure, rejection, and success forever. Let's begin. Her real name is Joanne Rowling, and she was born on July 31st, 1965, in a small town in England called Yate. She grew up in a simple, middle-class family. Her father, Peter, was an engineer, and her mother, Anne, was a science technician. They were not a rich family, but they had a normal, comfortable life. Joanne also had a younger sister named Diane, and the two of them were very, very close. They shared everything. As a child, Joanne was known for being a very quiet and a little bit shamed, but she had one thing that made her feel different from other children: her imagination. From a very young age, she fell in love with stories. She would spend hours and hours by herself, writing little stories, and then excitedly telling them to her younger sister. When she was just 6 years old, she wrote her very first story. It was about a rabbit who got sick with the measles and was visited by all of his animal friends. Even at such a young and tender age, she felt a deep calling. She knew, somewhere in her heart, that she wanted to be a writer. But life was not going to be easy for her. Joanne loved books more than anything and dreamed of one day becoming a famous author. Her parents, however, did not believe that writing could be a good or a safe career. They worried about her future. They wanted her to study something more practical, something like business, so she could be sure to get a good job. But Joanne's love for writing was a fire that never faded. She decided to go to Exeter University to study French, but deep inside, she did not really want to. She did it mostly to please her parents, to make them happy. Then, when she was only 15 years old, something terrible happened. Her mother was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. This is a very serious disease that affects the brain and the body, and there is no cure. Over the years, her mother's condition became worse and worse. This broke Joanne's heart into a million pieces. She was extremely close to her mother, and watching her suffer every single day filled her with a deep, quiet sadness. By the time Joanne finished university, her mother's health was much worse. She moved to London and began working in different jobs, including one as a secretary. But she was not happy. She felt like something was missing. She wanted more from her life. One day, in the year 1990, something truly magical happened. Joanne was sitting on a train traveling from Manchester to London. The train was delayed, and she was just staring out the window. Suddenly, an idea came into her mind. It was an idea about a young boy, a boy with glasses and a scar on his forehead. A boy who did not know that he was special. A boy who would one day become a great and powerful wizard. That boy's name was Harry Potter. She had no pen, no paper, nothing to write with. But she could not stop thinking about the story as it unfolded in her mind. She imagined Hogwarts, the incredible school of magic. She imagined the kind and wise Dumbledore and Harry's loyal friends, Ron and Hermione, and she imagined the dark villain, Voldemort. By the time the train finally reached London, she had already planned a big part of the story in her head. She rushed home and started writing immediately, her hands shaking with excitement. This was the moment that would change her life and the world forever. But just as Joanne started to build this magical world of Harry Potter, something terrible happened in her own world. Her mother, the person she loved the most, passed away in December of 1990. Joanne was completely and utterly heartbroken. She had not even had the chance to tell her mother about Harry Potter and the wonderful story she was creating. The pain of losing her mother was almost too much to bear. She fell into a deep, dark depression. To escape the pain, she decided to move to Portugal in 1991 to teach English. She thought that maybe a new country, a new start, would help her forget the sadness. While she was living in Portugal, she met a man named Jorge Arantes, and they got married. Soon after, they had a beautiful baby girl named Jessica. But this marriage was not a happy one. Her husband was abusive, and they would fight all the time. After just 1 year of marriage, they got divorced. Now, Joanne was a single mother, all alone in a foreign country. She had no money, no job, and a small baby to take care of. She had nothing. In 1993, she moved back to Scotland, her home country. She had no house, no job, and no one to help her. She was so poor that she had to live on government benefits, which means the government gave her a small amount of money just so she could survive. Some days, she could not afford to buy enough food. In the cold Scottish winters, she could not always afford to turn on the heat. She was completely broke. She suffered from severe depression and even had thoughts about ending her own life. In her own words, she felt like the biggest failure she knew. But she had one thing left, one small light in the darkness, her dream. Even in our darkest, most difficult times, she continued to write Harry Potter. She would go to small cafes with her baby daughter Jessica, sleeping in her stroller beside her. She would order one small coffee and write for hours and hours. Even though she had no idea if anyone would ever read her book, she just kept writing. She had no money, she had no drum, but she had a story, and she was not going to give up. So, J.K. Rowling had now written her first Harry Potter book. But her journey was far from over. She had no money and no support. She was living on government aid, struggling every single day just to feed her baby. She was depressed, lonely, and felt like a complete failure. But she had one thing that nobody could take away from her, a story she believed in. She loved her book, and she knew in her heart that it was special. Now, she just needed to find someone else in the world who would believe in it too. She started sending her manuscript, which is the name for a book before it is published, to different publishers. She truly believed it wouldn't take very long. After all, she had worked so hard, and she felt she had a really great story. She sent her manuscript to one publisher. They rejected it. They sent it back with a letter that said, "No thank you." She told herself, It's okay. This happens to many writers. So she gathered her courage and sent it to another publisher. They rejected it too. Then another, and another, and another. Every time she opened a rejection letter, her heart sank a little deeper. Each time she would think to herself, maybe this is the one. But each time she was disappointed. She started to doubt herself. Maybe my book isn't good enough, she thought. Maybe I'm just not meant to be a writer. She was already at the lowest point in her life. No money, no job, no support. And now she was facing rejection after rejection. Most people would have given up. Most people would have put the manuscript in a drawer and tried to forget about it. But she didn't. She kept sending her manuscript out until she had received 12 rejections. 12 different publishers told her no. They said things like, "This book won't sell," or "Children won't like it," or "It's much too long." They all said no. For most people, 12 rejections would mean the end of the road. But for J.K. Rowling, it was just the beginning. Here I want to pause the story for a moment and ask you something. Imagine being in her situation. You have a baby to feed, you have no money, and you feel completely alone. And on top of all that, 12 experts tell you that your dream is worthless. Where do you think she found the strength to continue? What would you have done in her place? Please take a moment to think about it and share your honest thoughts in the comments below. I would truly love to hear from you. After 12 rejections, she sent her manuscript to one more place, a small publishing house in London called Bloomsbury. She waited. Days passed, and then weeks passed. One day, she received a letter in the mail with the Bloomsbury logo on it. She opened it slowly, her hands trembling, expecting another rejection. But this time, it was different. Bloomsbury liked the book. They saw something special in the story of Harry Potter, but they were still a little unsure. The chairman of Bloomsbury, a man named Nigel Newton, took the first few chapters of the book home with him that night. He gave them to his 8-year-old daughter, Alice, to read. She loved the story. She finished the first chapter and immediately begged her father for more. The next day, she ran to her father and said, "Dad, this is the best book I've ever read. You have to publish it." And that was it. A little girl's pure love for the story was enough to convince Bloomsbury to give J.K. Rowling a chance. They offered her a deal, but it was a very small one. She was given an advance of just £1,500, which is about $2,000. Even after all her struggles, even after writing a book that would one day change the world, her first paycheck was tiny. But she didn't care at all. She had finally done it. Her book was going to be published. Even after accepting the book, the people at Bloomsbury were not very confident. They told J.K. Rowling something that almost broke her heart again. They said, "Don't expect much from this. Only a few thousand copies will be printed. You won't make a lot of money from this book. You should probably start looking for a real job." Imagine hearing that after years and years of struggle. But she didn't listen. She had a dream, and she was not going to give up on it now. In 1997, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone was finally published. At first, only 500 copies were printed. That's it. Out of those 500 copies, some were sent to libraries. No one had any idea that these few copies would one day become some of the most valuable books in history. Then, something incredible started to happen. People started talking about the book. Children who read it loved it. They told their parents about it, and their parents loved it. Teachers started reading it to their classes, and they loved it too. Word spread like wildfire. Soon, publishers in America became interested. a big auction was held to buy the U.S. publishing rights. An American publishing company called Scholastic won the bid. They offered J.K. Rowling $105,000 for the rights to publish her book in the United States. From a poor, struggling single mother living on government aid to receiving a six-figure deal, her life was about to change forever. She could hardly believe it. For the first time in years, she had money. She could finally take care of her daughter properly. She could finally breathe. But this was only the beginning. Because what happened next, no one in the world could have ever predicted. If you want to find out how J.K. Rowling went from this first small success to becoming one of the most famous writers in the world, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. That way, you won't miss the next part of this incredible journey and many other inspiring stories we have planned for you. After the amazing success of the first book, J.K. Rowling continued to write. She released Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets in 1998 and Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban in 1999. The books became instant bestsellers. By the time she released the fourth book, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, she had become a worldwide sensation. The books were being translated into more than 80 languages and were selling millions and millions of copies. Children, teenagers, and adults all over the world fell in love with Harry Potter. The books became movies, and the movies became huge blockbusters. By the early 2000s, J.K. Rowling was no longer poor. She was one of the richest women in the world. She had gone from living on government benefits to becoming a billionaire. She had proved everyone who doubted her wrong. But was her struggle really over? Fame brought new challenges. Success brought new critics and money. Well, money didn't solve everything. At the very peak of her success, J.K. Rowling became a billionaire. Yes, a billionaire. She was making more money than she could ever have imagined. But in 2012, something shocking happened. She lost her billionaire status. Did she waste all her money? Did she make bad investments? No. She lost her billionaire status because of two things. One was taxes. She believed in helping society, so she paid huge amounts in taxes to the government. Unlike some other very rich people who try to hide their money, she gave a big part of her income back to her country. The second reason was charity. She started donating millions and millions of pounds to charities. She gave money to help single mothers, to support struggling children, and to fund medical research. J.K. Rowling chose to stop being a billionaire. She once said, "You have a moral responsibility when you've been given far more than you need. You must do wise things with it and give intelligently." She never wrote her books for money. She wrote them because she loved stories, and she used her success to change thousands of lives. But even after all the good she did, she was about to face the biggest challenge of her life. For many years, J.K. Rowling was loved by almost everyone. She was known as the woman who inspired millions with her incredible story. But then, something changed. She started sharing her personal opinions on social media. Some people agreed with her, some people disagreed with her, and some people attacked her for what she said. She was suddenly being criticized, insulted, and even threatened. Some people said she should stop talking. Others said she was ruining her own legacy. For the first time in years, she was facing a different kind of rejection. Not from publishers, and not from poverty, but from the public. Some people even tried to cancel her. People who once loved her books now said they would never read them again. It was a painful and difficult time. But J.K. Rowling stood by her words. She refused to apologize for her beliefs. She had faced rejection before. She had been called a failure before. She had been told she was worthless before. But she never stopped. This time was no different. After the Harry Potter series was finished, people wondered, will J.K. Rowling ever write another book? For a little while, she stayed silent. Then, in 2013, she released a new book. But she didn't use her real name. She published it under a fake name, Robert Galbraith. Why did she do this? Because she wanted to test herself again. She wanted to know, can I still succeed without the famous name J.K. Rowling on the cover? The book was called The Cuckoo's Calling. At first, no one knew that she was the author. The book got great reviews from critics, but it sold only a few thousand copies. Then, after a few months, the truth came out. A journalist discovered that J.K. Rowling was the real author. Within hours, the book became a #1 bestseller. She proved to the world and to herself that she wasn't just famous because of Harry Potter. She was a real writer with real talent. She had more stories to tell, and she wasn't done yet. J.K. Rowling achieved unimaginable success, but behind all of that success, there was still pain. Her mother never got to see her succeed. She never got to hold one of the Harry Potter books. This thought still haunts her. Every time she talks about her mother, she gets tears in her eyes. I wish she had seen this. I wish she had known, she once said. The books are what they are because my mother died. It was a huge, life-changing moment. Her mother's death changed her forever, and no amount of money, success, or fame could ever bring her back. She still carries this loss deep in her heart. And that is a powerful truth about life. Even after incredible success, some wounds never truly heal. Many people ask, how did J.K. Rowling write such an amazing and detailed story? The truth is, she lived it. She didn't just imagine Harry Potter's world, she felt it. She poured her own pain, her own struggles, and her own emotions into the story. Harry Potter is not just a fantasy story. It's a story about love and loss, just like Rowling lost her mother and Harry lost his parents. It's a story about fear and courage, just like Rowling was scared of failure and Harry was scared of Voldemort. It's a story about hope and friendship, just like Rowling found support in her darkest times and Harry found Ron and Hermione. Every part of Harry Potter came from her own life. That is why it feels so real. That is why millions of people all over the world connect with it so deeply. Because it's not just about magic, it's about life itself. Even after becoming famous, Rowling never stopped writing. She could have retired and lived a life of luxury, but she didn't. Why? Because writing was her life. She once said, I write because I love it, not because I need the money. If I stopped writing, a part of me would die. Even after so much criticism, so much hate, and so much success, she kept writing, because for her, writing was never about money. It was about telling stories that matter. J.K. Rowling's life is not just a success story. It's a story of rejection. She was rejected 12 times. It's a story of failure. She was broke, divorced, and depressed. And it's a story of criticism. She was attacked, hated, and canceled. But despite all of this, she never stopped. She kept writing. She kept fighting. She kept believing. And in the end, she won. Her story teaches us one very powerful lesson. No matter how many times you fail, never stop believing in yourself. Because sometimes, our biggest failures lead to our greatest successes. Today, J.K. Rowling is still writing, creating, and inspiring. She continues to write books under her real name and her fake name, Robert Galbraith. She runs charities that help millions of people. She speaks her mind, even when people disagree with her. She proves that success is not about money. It's about the impact you have on the world. She is not just a writer. She is a legend. Her story will be told for generations to come, because she didn't just write books. She changed the world. J.K. Rowling's life was filled with pain, struggles, and failures, but she never, ever gave up. And today, she is a symbol of hope for millions of people. So if you are facing rejection today, if you are feeling lost and hopeless, if you think your dreams are impossible, remember J.K. Rowling's story. Remember that success does not come easy. Remember that failure is not the end. Because just like J.K. Rowling, your story is not over yet. Her journey teaches us that success is not about luck. It's about never giving up. If you believe in yourself, if you keep going no matter how many times you fail, if you work hard even when no one else believes in you, then one day your name will be remembered, just like J.K. Rowling's. Because greatness is not something you are born with. It is something you make. And just like her, you have the power to write your own success story. And that's where our story of J.K. Rowling concludes. This one was a real journey, wasn't it? From such deep sadness to such incredible heights. I am so curious to hear your take on it all. What were your final thoughts as you listened? Do you have any lingering questions about why a character did what they did, or about any part of her life? Please leave all your opinions, your theories, and your questions in the comments section below. I truly love reading every single one and building this wonderful conversation with all of you. Thank you for listening, and I will see you in the next story.